Usually, that instinct is just your brain spotting red flags that your logical side has not figured out yet. While the legal system came through for Mary Goff and her boys, that serves only the law. No court ruling or jail time can ever undo this loss. She is frozen in time at 27, her future stolen by the very man who swore a sacred oath to protect her. Her relatives are still trying to navigate the empty space she left, holding on to her legacy and the warmth she shared with them. The entire situation with Mary is simply heartbreaking. Yet it also stands as proof of the detective's grit in catching a murderer and a family's fight to keep their daughter's memory alive. It also serves as a brutal lesson that we must listen when women show us they are suffering. We have to notice when something is wrong, especially when they look drained during moments that should be full of joy. If this investigation impacted you, or if you feel a connection to what happened to Mary, please go ahead and click that subscribe button and ring the bell so you are always updated on new uploads. We believe these people count. We tell these stories because the victims deserve respect and remembrance. Pass this video along to help others recognize the dangers of domestic abuse and potentially save a life. By working together, we make sure women like Mary remain in our memories. Thanks for tuning in, and please take care of yourselves. Silence reigns on Clonard Street until past 12, when a panicked emergency call shatters the peace. With a trembling voice, a newlywed man informs the dispatcher that his spouse took a tumble down the steps. Claiming he heard a crash, he sprinted from their room to discover her lifeless body slumped at the base of the stairway. Upon arrival, the EMTs discovered 27-year-old Mary Goff sprawled out across the entryway floor. Someone had draped a comforter over her frame to provide warmth, yet her robe was missing from the scene. The husband walks back and forth in a panic, chanting that she simply slipped and stopped taking breaths. Insisting he dialed for help immediately, Mary is speeded to Beaumont Hospital, where staff sense trouble the second they examine her. Her body temperature is suspiciously low, and her visible wounds fail to align with the husband's account of events. Doctors exchange silent, knowing glances as they take a closer look at the marks around her throat. Investigators get the alert within a few hours that this was definitely not a typical domestic mishap. What events actually transpired inside that residence prior to him dialing 999 for help? Why would a woman married for under 6 months wind up deceased at the foot of her own staircase? Prepared to dive into the grimmest tales from Britain, we are proud to present our latest release, Unreal True Crime, British Edition. Featuring 35 stunning homicide investigations guaranteed to keep you glued to every single page. Pick up the paperback or Kindle version on Amazon right now, or download the PDF directly from our site via the links below. Make sure to secure your copy today so you do not miss out. And now let us get back to the story at hand. Raised in Stamulin, County Meath, Mary arrived in 1974 as the sole daughter in a house full of 5 boys. After becoming a widow in 1989, her mom Marie viewed Mary as her dearest friend and top confidant. That relationship was something special, and being the lone girl meant she learned early on how to hold her ground. She cultivated a truly sweet disposition that made her instantly lovable to anybody who crossed her path. Employed as a legal secretary for a firm in Swords, she earned a great deal of respect from her office peers. Sinead Byrne, her closest pal, recalled her as a joyful spirit who remained composed and quiet at the same time. Mary held on to modest aspirations for a devoted husband, raising children, and owning a place of her own. Back in 1993, the 19-year-old was staffing the Huntsman Inn near home when she first encountered Colin Whelan, a guy from North County, Dublin. He became her first major romance and tragically her final one. Colin was actually a regular patron at the pub. The pair started seeing each other, and everything appeared completely standard for those initial 2 years. So by 1995, they hit a snag and called it quits, though the split was brief before they got back together. Whelan bought a property from a family member on Clonard Street in Balbriggan during 1997. This move solidified their future, and by 1998, Colin popped the question, and she happily accepted. Now engaged, they started wedding preparations while loved ones viewed them as young sweethearts securing a fairy tale ending. Marie, her mother, embraced Colin as if he were her own flesh and blood. Even her brothers accepted him into the fold, making them look like one big, happy family unit. The pair finally tied the knot on September 9th, 2000, with Mary looking absolutely stunning at the ceremony. She was wedding the guy she had adored since her teenage years, yet her inner circle sensed something was off. Marie Goff later mentioned that the bride did not appear as joyful as one might expect on such a big occasion. A look in her daughter's eyes caused concern, but nobody realized Colin was already scheming to murder her while he recited his vows. Back in June of 2000, just 90 days prior to the ceremony, Colin bumped up their life insurance coverage by double. Should one of them pass away within a decade, the survivor stood to gain more than £500,000. That amount was massive, valued at roughly £400,000 during that era. It soon became obvious that greed drove his actions, yet the insurance policy was merely the start of it all. From July of 2000 through February 2001, Whelan, who was an IT analyst at Irish Permanent Bank, performed no fewer than 21 web searches on his office computer using truly disturbing keywords. He looked up asphyxiation, blacking out, and the exact duration it takes for someone to perish from lack of air. Queries included brain, oxygen deprivation, strangling, and choking as he studied how to commit the perfect homicide. But Whelan took his preparations a step further. He grabbed a legal transcript straight from the North Carolina Supreme Court archives, focusing on the brutal case of Henry Louis Wallace, a serial predator guilty of slaying 9 women. This monster had a terrifying reputation for choking the life out of people while leaving almost zero physical evidence behind on their bodies. The trick was sliding a towel under whatever cord he used, creating a cushion that stopped the usual bruising or abrasion patterns from showing up on the throat. Barely 4 months after saying his vows in late 2000, Whelan started chatting up a lady from the UK over the internet. Going by the handle Celtic Tackle, he shared pictures of himself and bragged about a massive payout he was expecting to hit his bank account soon. Their digital affair heated up quickly as the calendar creeped toward March of 2001. Despite never actually meeting face-to-face, they scheduled a date for March 2nd, 2001. By then, Whelan planned to be single and rich. It all went down on February 28th, 2001. The couple drove out to Drogheda for a homeopathic cleanse session together, heading back to their place on Clonard Street in Balbriggan later that night. That evening marked the final hours of Mary's life. Somewhere in the darkness between late February 28th and the very start of March 1st, 2001, Colin Whelan executed the grim scheme he'd been plotting for months, choking his wife Mary using the sash from her own bathrobe. He applied the exact technique he picked up while obsessing over the Henry Louis Wallace files, taking pains to make sure the cord left no trace. Once Mary was gone, he set the stage to make it look like a tragic mishap. He untied the sash, stashing it away while tossing the robe itself onto the floor of the master bedroom. Then he dragged Mary's lifeless form and arranged it at the foot of the staircase. Trying to fake a recent death, he covered her with a comforter to maintain body heat, a trick he'd pulled straight from his online searches. The method mirrored the American killer's MO perfectly, highlighting the chilling parallels between the two murders. At exactly 12:16 in the morning on March 1st, Colin finally dialed 999. He put on a panicked act for the dispatcher, shouting that his wife had taken a spill down the steps and had stopped breathing. The story was that he heard a crash and ran out to discover her knocked out cold on the landing. Medics rushed to the scene right away and loaded Mary up for an emergency run to Beaumont Hospital. Colin drove behind them, but as soon as the hospital team got a look at Mary, alarm bells started ringing. Several physicians noted immediately that her skin felt unnaturally cold for someone who had just been injured. That detail blew a hole in Whelan's story. If she had fallen right before he called 999, she shouldn't have been that cold. Dr. Ali, the specialist trying to bring her back while sliding a tube down her throat, spotted distinct abrasions on her upper torso and throat that didn't match up with the tumble down a staircase. One of the nurses attending to Whelan tipped off the Balbriggan cops that the husband had fresh claw marks on his own chest. When they officially called time of death, the entire medical team was already skeptical of the husband's version of events. Marie Goff pulled into Beaumont Hospital a little after 1 in the morning. She walked up to Colin, who was slumped over, and when she asked for an update, he bluntly stated that Mary was gone. That icy, detached delivery was something she would never forget. Detective Inspector Pat Mary led the squad from Balbriggan Garda Station, and right out of the gate, the pieces weren't fitting together. Science just wasn't backing up the claim that this was an accidental trip and fall. Dr. Marie Cassidy, the state pathologist, ran the autopsy, and came back to the detectives with a bombshell conclusion. It was officially a homicide. Dr. Cassidy's report left no doubt that a fall didn't kill Mary Goff. Someone had choked her out, leaving a clear imprint from a cord on the right side of her throat. Burst blood vessels under her eyes and a tongue swollen to triple its usual size pointed straight to violent asphyxiation. Investigators also found a friction burn seared into the side of her neck from the strangulation tool. A real tumble down the steps would have caused head trauma, but her skull was completely untouched. Forensics teams swept the Clonard Street residence, uncovering blood splatters in the master bedroom and out in the hallway. They located the bathrobe and its sash lying inside the bedroom rather than on Mary, which made no sense if she supposedly fell while wearing it. Worse yet, the sash had blood right in the middle. Lab results proved the blood belonged to Mary, confirming that the sash was the weapon used to take her life. Detectives confiscated Whelan's electronics, and when the fraud unit dug into his browsing history, the results were absolutely chilling. Those 21 web queries about choking and cutting off air supply proved he planned it all along. He had even pulled the court files on Henry Louis Wallace to study the killer's methods like a textbook. In both scenarios, the killer used a heavy comforter to keep the victim's body warm. Each one involved using a towel to hide neck bruises, proving these weren't coincidences but carbon copies. Sure enough, investigators discovered a towel lying right next to Mary's remains. On April 10th, 2001, barely a month after Mary died, officers arrested Colin Whelan for murder. Detective Inspector Pat Mary led the interrogation, but Whelan stayed tight-lipped despite the mountain of evidence. He stuck firmly to his story that Mary's death was nothing more than a tragic accident. Colin stood in court, entering a not guilty plea, with his trial date set way out for October 13th, 2003. Then the court made a disastrous move by granting him bail that very same afternoon. The only strings attached were surrendering his passport and checking in daily at the Balbriggan station. Whelan played by the rules for over a year, showing up to sign the book like clockwork. But on March 12th, 2003, 7 months before his trial, he vanished and his family reported him missing. Authorities found his Peugeot 206 later that day, dumped on the cliffs of Howth Head facing the ocean. The keys were sitting on the passenger seat right next to an empty gin bottle and some personal gear. Rescue teams launched a huge manhunt across land, air, and sea, scouring the water and rocks around Howth. Everyone assumed he had jumped to his death in the ocean, yet nobody ever found a corpse. Both families and the police smelled a rat, suspecting Colin faked the suicide to dodge his day in court. They flagged Interpol, turning the local search into a worldwide manhunt. Colin Whelan stayed off the grid for more than a year, seemingly pulling off the perfect vanishing act. The two families even got tangled up in a lawsuit, fighting over who got to keep his abandoned car. A judge at the Dublin District Court finally ruled that the state should take possession of the vehicle. The big break finally hit in July 2004 when a sharp tourist in Majorca spotted him bartending. That traveler tipped off the local police, confirming the man was indeed Colin Whelan. He had been hiding out in Majorca, living a lie under the alias Martin Sweeney. The guy managed to snag a bogus Irish passport and fooled local cops enough to get a Spanish ID card. He had constructed a whole new existence, complete with a steady girlfriend and a big crew of buddies. Working alongside Spanish officials, authorities extradited Colin Whelan back to Irish soil. On July 10th, 2004, Judge Paul Carney offered him a speedy trial right after he landed. Whelan turned the offer down, opting to drag the legal proceedings out even longer. That move just twisted the knife for Mary's family, denying them any sense of closure. Colin Whelan finally stood before the Central Criminal Court in Dublin during April of 2005. Flipping his plea to guilty, he confessed to killing his wife, Mary Goff, on February 28th, 2001. That was the first time the Goff family heard the twisted details of Whelan's master plan. Marie Goff called the courtroom revelations a total blindside, since she never understood the motive before. Prosecutors connected the dots, pointing to the life insurance payout he doubled just months before the wedding. They highlighted his 21 web searches on choking and that digital court file on a serial murderer. They exposed his internet romance with a woman he planned to see right after the killing and the staged accident. Plus the Forensics confirmed he used the belt from Mary's own robe to choke the life out of her. During the victim impact statements, Mary's relatives spoke from the heart, with her brother Gerard taking the stand. We are the ones serving a life sentence now, stuck with this forever without any chance of parole. We cannot escape the fact that Mary is gone for good and she is never coming back. Gerard's twin, David, spoke straight to Colin, even while the killer looked at the floor and avoided eye contact. You, Colin Whalen, choked Mary to death on March 1st, 2001. We will never forgive you for that. You destroyed our family and stole a part of us when you took her life. Running away just proved you are nothing but a spineless coward who refused to face what you did. You tried to cheat us out of real justice. You honestly believe the rules did not apply to you, but you were dead wrong. The scales have finally been balanced in this room today. The only thing Mary ever did wrong was loving a man like you with her whole heart. Marie Goff, her mother, said she could not wrap her head around why Whelan did not just pack his bags and leave if he had no desire to be married. It is obvious now that he never truly cared for her at all. If he had any real affection for her, he would have just walked out the door when things got tough. I loved that boy as if he were my own son. My boys looked at him like he was their own blood brother. We really thought we were all part of one big, happy family unit. Hugh Hartnett, the defense attorney representing Colin, stated that his client wanted to convey his deepest regrets to the entire Goff family. Whelan stood up and told Marie directly that he was sorry for taking away her daughter, best friend, and soulmate for absolutely no reason. However, his apology did not do much to ease the pain. Judge Paul Carney handed down the punishment, and his comments were absolutely scorching. He described the crime as the most cold-blooded and planned-out murder he had ever seen during his entire career on the bench. Since Whelan had skipped town and fled Ireland to delay the inevitable, the judge decided he would not get credit for time served regarding the months he had already spent behind bars. Colin Whelan was slapped with a mandatory life sentence in prison, beginning immediately from that specific date, April 12th, 2005. The killing of Mary Goff destroyed her family in a way that time will likely never be able to fix. Marie Goff, having lost her husband and now her only daughter, called this heavy weight a curse she is forced to bear for the rest of her days. He pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. We thought we knew the man, but the whole thing was just a performance, she explained to the press. The knife of betrayal twisted deep. This was a guy they welcomed in, embraced as a member of the clan, and trusted with their precious Mary. The incident sent shockwaves through the town of Balbriggan and stunned the entire Irish population. The fact that it was not a crime of passion, but a coldly calculated plot where Whelan had schemed to kill his wife before they even walked down the aisle, along with his escape, gripped the whole nation. People started calling it the staircase murder of Ireland, drawing parallels to other notorious crimes from the past. Detective Inspector Pat Murray, the lead investigator who eventually retired, called it the one case that would stick with him forever. Looking back on Colin Whelan for a documentary, he described the killer as a textbook psychopath, manipulative, sneaky, and purely evil. This investigation stood apart from every other case in his decades of service because of how icy and deliberate the whole thing was. For the family left behind, the fallout is everlasting. They wake up with the heavy reality of her absence every single morning. As Marie mentioned, they try not to hold on to hate because existing is difficult enough without lugging that anger around. Yet, the agony stays fresh. Mary was only 27 years old, with her entire future waiting for her. She dreamed of being a mother, having a cozy house, and enjoying a sweet marriage. She earned the right to have all those dreams come true. Colin Whelan has been sitting in a cell for over 20 years now. He recently came up for parole review, but according to the latest news, his request for early release was flatly denied. So he stays locked up in an Irish facility finishing out his life term. A woman named Katie Wilcox reportedly visited him on a consistent basis after he was found guilty, promising to stand by his side. It is unclear if that arrangement is still ongoing. The tragic death of Mary Goff serves as a freezing reminder that true darkness can masquerade as something totally mundane. Colin was not some creep hiding in an alleyway. He was a childhood love, a fiancé, and a husband. He was a person Mary had been close with since she was just 19 years old. He was invited into the sanctuary of her home, relied upon and deeply loved. Yet underneath that friendly mask lived a scheming murderer who was looking up ways to kill. At the same time, he was planning a wedding, and who bought life insurance policies, specifically anticipating his bride's death, all while reading up on serial killers to sharpen his methods. The level of planning here is just mind-blowing. This wasn't a snap decision made in anger. He plotted, he studied, he got ready, and the second he got busted, he took off, faking his own demise to start over while Mary's family was left broken. This tragedy forces us to face some hard facts. First, that wickedness can be carefully designed and carried out by an individual who looks totally average. Second, that the folks we think we have figured out might be hiding the worst skeletons. And third, that although justice might take its sweet time, it can eventually win. It took 4 years from the time Mary died until Colin was finally convicted, but the relentless work of officers like Detective Inspector Pat Murray made sure he didn't walk free after taking a life. However, I need to make one thing crystal clear. This story also warns us to listen to our gut feelings. Marie Goff sensed something was wrong on the very day of the wedding. When you notice a loved one looking miserable in their marriage, or if the vibe feels off, pay attention to it. Stop trying to convince yourself that you are just imagining things.